The human fleet materialized at the edge of Arcturian space, its massive silhouette blotting out stars. Automated alert systems across Arcturia and its colonies blared to life, their urgent wails piercing the night. Every Arcturian who witnessed the arrival of the colossal armada felt a primal fear take root in their hearts. Admiral Stephen Reed stood on the bridge of the UES Titan, his flagship and the crown jewel of humanity's space fleet. He surveyed the alien star system before him, a mix of anticipation and determination etched on his weathered face. The fleet maintained a defensive formation, a wall of steel and advanced technology that dwarfed even the largest Arcturian vessels. On the Arcturian homeworld, Janus, a high-ranking diplomat, jolted awake to the sound of alarms. He rushed to the central government complex, his mind racing with possibilities and fears. The Arcturian leadership, a collection of academics and theorists wholly unprepared for this moment, convened in an emergency session. Panic spread through the assembled officials as reports flooded in. The human ships bristled with weapon systems beyond Arcturian comprehension. Military commanders, their voices tinged with desperation, argued for immediate surrender. Others, clinging to hope, pushed for attempted communication. Janus, his voice steady despite the fear churning in his stomach, advocated for a cautious diplomatic approach. "We must meet these humans face to face," he urged. "It's our only chance to avoid annihilation." The government reluctantly agreed, seeing no alternative that didn't end in their destruction. Janus and a small team of representatives boarded a shuttle, their apprehension growing as they approached the behemoth human vessel. The Titan's size became apparent as they neared, its hull stretching beyond the limits of Arcturian engineering. Janus realized with crushing certainty that his people were completely outmatched. The shuttle docked with a soft thud, and Janus led his team into the cavernous bay of the human ship. Admiral Reed stood waiting, his tall figure imposing in a crisp military uniform. Janus stepped forward, struggling to mask his fear as he prepared to negotiate for his species' survival. Unknown to the Arcturians, this encounter was merely the opening move in a larger human strategy. The fleet's arrival marked humanity's push to establish a foothold in this sector of space. Their ultimate goal, to create a buffer zone against a more dangerous alien threat lurking beyond Arcturian territory. As Janus approached Admiral Reed, the fate of two civilizations hung in the balance. The humans, with their overwhelming military might, stood poised to reshape the galaxy. The Arcturians, peaceful and unprepared, faced a future suddenly fraught with uncertainty. In this moment, on the deck of a human warship, history waited to be written. Admiral Reed's piercing stare met Janus's large, expressive eyes. The Arcturian diplomat's antennae twitched nervously as he awaited the humans' response to their plea for peace. The cavernous docking bay of the UES Titan hummed with tension, the air thick with unspoken threats and desperate hopes. Suddenly, Lieutenant Commander Alex Thorne's voice crackled through Reed's earpiece. "Admiral, urgent encrypted message from United Space Command. Your eyes only, sir." Reed's mind focused imperceptibly. He raised a hand, halting the proceedings. "Excuse me, gentlemen. A matter requires my immediate attention." As Reed stepped away, Janus exchanged worried glances with his delegation. The human admiral's abrupt departure only heightened their anxiety. In a nearby command alcove, Reed's face hardened as he absorbed the contents of the message. The Voraks, a previously unknown alien force, were advancing rapidly towards their sector. Their intentions were clear: total conquest of both human and Arcturian space. Reed's mind raced, reassessing the entire situation in light of this new information. He strode back to the negotiation area, his posture rigid with newfound urgency. The Admiral activated a holographic display, filling the air with tactical data and long-range sensor readings. "This is classified intelligence, but given the circumstances, full disclosure is necessary. An alien force known as the Voraks is en route to this sector. Their fleet dwarfs our own, and their technology—" He paused, letting the implications sink in. "They intend to conquer us all." "Check them again," Reed interrupted. "Now!" With trembling hands, Janus activated his own datapad. His eyes widened as he processed the information. "By the celestial spheres," he whispered. "It's true. It seems, Admiral, that we find ourselves in need of allies, Janus said, his voice steady despite the tremor in his limbs. Reed nodded solemnly. Indeed, I propose a temporary alliance. Your scientific knowledge combined with our military strength may be our only hope against this Vorex threat. As the gravity of the situation settled over both parties, the docking bay burst into a flurry of activity. Reed barked orders into his comm unit, mobilizing the human fleet into defensive positions around key Arcturian worlds. Janus coordinated with his homeworld, initiating emergency protocols and authorizing the sharing of advanced shield technology with the humans. Aboard the Titan, Lieutenant Sophia Chen found herself reassigned to a critical new task. The young weapons specialist made her way to a hastily assembled joint laboratory where she met her Arcturian counterpart. Lyra, a female Arcturian scientist, greeted Sophia with a complex series of gestures that her translator rendered as, "Welcome, human. I hope your weapons are as advanced as your ships." Sophia smiled tightly, setting down her equipment. "Let's find out together, shall we? We need to integrate our weapon systems with your shield technology, and fast." The two women worked tirelessly, their initial mistrust gradually giving way to mutual respect as they tackled the monumental task before them. Sophia marveled at the elegant complexity of Arcturian shield harmonics, while Lyra's eyes widened at the raw power of human weaponry. "If we modulate the phase variance of your shields to match our photon torpedo frequencies," Sophia mused, her fingers flying over a console, "we could create a devastating 1-2 punch." Lyra's antennae perked up in excitement. "Yes! And if we then cycle the resonance pattern to—" Their voices overlapped as they delved deeper into their work, the seeds of an unlikely friendship taking root amidst the looming threat. On the Arcturian homeworld, chaos reigned as mass evacuations began. Human Marines, their combat armor gleaming under alien suns, assisted in herding civilians into underground shelters and onto off-world transport ships. The scene was one of controlled pandemonium, with the guttural shouts of human soldiers mixing with the high-pitched warbles of terrified Arcturians. Sergeant Maria Vasquez found herself facing a group of Arcturian volunteers, their slender frames dwarfed by the makeshift combat gear they wore. "All right, listen up," she bellowed, her translator working overtime. "I know you're scared. Hell, I'm scared too, but fear keeps you alive if you know how to use it." One Arcturian, braver than the rest, stepped forward to mimic Vasquez's actions. His movements were clumsy but earnest, and Vasquez nodded in approval. "Good. Now everyone, follow his lead. We'll make fighters out of you yet." As the impromptu training session continued, a shadow fell over the gathering. All eyes turned skyward as the massive form of the UES Titan descended through the atmosphere, taking up position above the capital city. The sight of the human flagship, once a source of terror, now brought a collective sigh of relief from the Arcturian populace. Aboard the Titan, Admiral Reed and Janus stood side by side in the newly established Joint Command Center. Holographic displays surrounded them, showing the positions of their combined fleets and the latest intelligence on the Vorex approach. "Your people's scientific knowledge is remarkable," Reed commented, studying a detailed analysis of Vorex ship capabilities. "If only we'd met under better circumstances." Janus nodded, his eyes fixed on the tactical display. "And your strategic acumen is impressive. I fear we would not have survived long without it." Their grudging admiration was interrupted by a proximity alert. Lieutenant Commander Thorne's voice rang out, "Vorex scout ships detected at the system's edge." Outside, a sleek formation of human fighters streaked across the Arcturian sky. In the lead Raptor, Captain Jake Morrison felt a familiar rush of adrenaline as he pushed his craft to maximum acceleration. "All wings, report in," he commanded, his eyes scanning the heads-up display for signs of the enemy. A chorus of affirmatives crackled through his comm system as his squadron fell into attack formation. Ahead, the first hints of Vorex scout ships shimmered into view, their alien designs unlike anything the human pilots had encountered before. A Vorex beam grazed his shields, sending a shudder through the fighter's frame. Morrison gritted his teeth, executing a tight barrel roll to bring his weapons to bear. "Eat this," he muttered, unleashing a barrage of fire that tore through the enemy ship's defenses. The dogfight was brief but intense. When the last Vorax scout exploded in a brilliant flash, a ragged cheer went up from the human pilots. As they regrouped and headed back to the Titan, Morrison allowed himself a small smile. They had won this skirmish, but he knew the real battle was yet to come. A good start, Reed mused, but his words were cut short as a new alert blared through the command center. Long-range sensors lit up with hundreds, then thousands of new contacts. The main Vorax fleet had arrived. "All ships, battle stations," Reed ordered, his voice calm despite the gravity of the situation. "This is not a drill. Repeat, this is not a drill." As klaxons sounded throughout the human and Arcturian fleets, the combined armada began to form up into a defensive line. The once empty space between the planets now bristled with ships of all sizes, their weapons charged and shields at maximum. In the tense silence before the battle, humans and Arcturians alike prepared themselves for the fight of their lives. The future of both their species hung in the balance, with the Vorax threat looming ever closer. Larger, its hulking silhouette blotting out the stars, the combined human Arcturian fleet held their positions, a united front against the impending storm. Admiral Reed's voice cut through the tense silence of the Titan's bridge. "All ships, maintain formation. Prepare for incoming fire." The order had barely left his lips when the space between the fleets lit up with a dazzling array of energy weapons. The human Arcturian shields flared to life, a shimmering barrier against the onslaught. "Shields holding at 82%, Lieutenant Commander Alex Thorne reported, his fingers dancing across his console. "The Arcturian modifications are working better than expected." Reed allowed himself a small smile. "Excellent. Now let's see what our own modifications can do. All ships, return fire." The combined fleet unleashed its own barrage, a mixture of human photon torpedoes and Arcturian crystal-focused energy beams. The Vorax lines rippled under the assault, but their advance continued unabated. As the battle raged, the Titan became a hive of activity. In a hastily assembled laboratory, Lieutenant Sophia Chen and her Arcturian counterpart, Lyra, worked feverishly on their hybrid weapon system. "If we can just stabilize the plasma containment field," Sophia muttered, her eyes fixed on a holographic display of swirling energy patterns. Sophia's eyes widened. "That's brilliant. It could create a self-reinforcing energy loop, dramatically increasing the weapon's power output." Their fingers flew over the controls, making rapid adjustments. The holographic display flickered, then stabilized into a tight, pulsing sphere of energy. "We did it!" Sophia exclaimed, her face lighting up with triumph. Lyra's skin flushed a deep blue, her species equivalent of a smile. "Quickly, we must inform Admiral Reed." As Sophia and Lyra rushed to the bridge with their breakthrough, Captain Jake Morrison led his mixed squadron of human and Arcturian fighters on a daring reconnaissance mission. They weaved through the chaotic battlefield, sensors straining to gather data on the Vorax fleet. "Stay sharp, people," Morrison's voice crackled over the comm. "We're looking for weaknesses, not trying to be heroes." An Arcturian pilot, Zin, suddenly called out, "Captain, I'm detecting an anomaly at coordinates 227 by 184. It appears to be a damaged Vorax scout ship." Morrison's pulse quickened. "Good eye, Zin. All units form up on me. We're going to take a closer look." The squadron approached cautiously, weapons primed. The Vorax ship drifted listlessly, its hull scorched and breached in multiple places. "It looks abandoned," Morrison observed, "but let's not take any chances. Zin, Hawkins, you're with me. The rest of you, cover us." The three fighters moved in close, using their tractor beams to secure the derelict vessel. As they began to tow it back to the Titan, a flash of movement caught Morrison's eye. "We've got a live one!" he shouted. "Prepare for possible hostiles!" But the lone Vorax pilot, injured and clearly disoriented, offered no resistance as they brought the captured ship into the Titan's hangar bay. On the bridge, Admiral Reed received the news of the captured Vorax ship and pilot with grim satisfaction. "This could be the break we need. Get Dr. Elliot down there immediately. I want to know everything about our new guest." As if on cue, Sophia and Lyra burst onto the bridge, their faces flushed with excitement. Reed's eyes lit up. Outstanding work, both of you. Commander Thorne, begin integrating the new weapon systems into our defense grid immediately. Thorne nodded, already coordinating with engineering teams across the fleet. Yes, sir. We should have the first units online within the hour. As the battle continued to rage outside, Dr. Marcus Elliott found himself face-to-face with the captured Vorx pilot. The alien was a mass of writhing tentacles and bioluminescent patches, its multiple eyes darting nervously around the makeshift holding cell. Elliott approached cautiously, his translator device at the ready. "Can you understand me?" he asked, his voice calm and measured. The Vorax's tentacles twisted in what might have been a nod. A series of clicks and whistles emanated from its body, which the translator rendered as, "I hear you, human. Why am I alone? Where are the voices of my brethren?" Elliott's brow furrowed. "Voices? Are you in constant communication with your kind?" The Vorax's bioluminescent patches pulsed rapidly. "Always. We are one mind, one purpose. But now, silence." As Elliott continued his examination, Reed turned his attention back to the battle. The Vorax assault had intensified, their ships pressing hard against the human Arcturian defensive line. "Sir," Thorne called out, his voice tense, "we're losing ground in sectors 7 and 9. The Arcturian colonies there are taking heavy fire." Reed's eyebrows furrowed. He knew what had to be done, but the cost would be high. "Order all forces to fall back to defensive position, Beta. We need to consolidate our strength around the Arcturian homeworld." Janus's antennae drooped in dismay. "Admiral, surely there must be another way. Those colonies—" "We'll be lost if we try to hold everything," Reed finished, his voice firm but not unkind. "I'm sorry, Janus, but this is our best chance for long-term survival." As the orders went out, the human Arcturian fleet began its strategic withdrawal. The space around them lit up with the desperate exchanges of weapons fire, punctuated by the silent explosions of ships and stations caught in the crossfire. On the Arcturian homeworld, the news of the retreating defense line was met with a mixture of fear and anger. Janus found himself besieged by calls from his fellow leaders, demanding explanations and accusing the humans of betrayal. "Please, you must understand," Janus pleaded during a heated conference call. "This temporary loss is necessary for our survival. The humans aren't abandoning us. They're giving us a fighting chance." As the debate raged on, Lieutenant Sophia Chen approached Admiral Reed with a determined look in her eyes. "Sir, I have a proposal," she began, her voice steady despite the chaos around them. "Based on Dr. Elliott's findings about the Vorax hive mind, I believe we could develop a psionic disruptor to sever their mental connections." As Sophia hurried off to begin her work, Reed turned back to the viewport. The Vorax fleet loomed ever larger, a dark tide threatening to engulf them all. But as he watched his human and Arcturian forces fighting side by side, a glimmer of hope sparked in his chest. Together, they just might find a way to survive this onslaught and forge a new future for both their peoples. The battle was a long way to go, and the challenges ahead were daunting. But in the crucible of war, the unlikely alliance between humans and Arcturians was being tempered into something stronger than either species could have imagined. As the Titan's weapons flared to life once more, Admiral Reed steeled himself for the trials to come, knowing that the fate of two civilizations rested on the decisions made in the hours ahead. Admiral Reed's eyes scanned the tactical display, his brow furrowed in concentration. The Vorax fleet loomed ever closer, a dark mass that seemed to consume the stars themselves. He turned to Lieutenant Sophia Chen, who had just entered the bridge with her Arcturian counterpart, Lyra. Sophia's eyes were rimmed with dark circles, evidence of countless sleepless nights. "We're making headway, sir. The integration of Dr. Elliott's findings on Vorax biology has been crucial. We've identified the specific radiation frequency their hive mind relies on." Lyra's antennae twitched in agreement. "Yes, but we're facing challenges in creating a device powerful enough to disrupt their entire fleet. The energy requirements are significant." Reed nodded grimly. "Keep at it. It may be our best shot at turning this war around." As Sophia and Lyra returned to their makeshift lab, Reed turned his attention back to the battle at hand. He keyed his comm, connecting to Captain Jake Morrison's fighter squadron. Morrison, I need you to take your team and scout the asteroid field at coordinates 338 by 421. Long-range sensors picked up some anomalous readings there. Copy that, Admiral. Morrison's voice crackled through the speakers. We're on our way. Morrison's mixed human Arcturian squadron streaked through space, their engines leaving trails of blue plasma in their wake. As they approached the asteroid field, Morrison's co-pilot, the Arcturian Zin, suddenly called out, Captain, I'm detecting energy signatures consistent with Vorax technology. It appears to be a supply depot? The squadron weaved through the asteroids, using the rocky cover to mask their approach. As they cleared the last of the floating debris, they saw it, a sprawling Vorax facility nestled in the heart of the field. All units, weapons free, Morrison ordered. Hit them hard and fast. The human and Arcturian fighters unleashed a barrage of missiles and energy weapons. The Vorax facility, caught completely off guard, erupted in a series of explosions. Supply ships docked at the station attempted to flee, but were quickly picked off by Morrison's team. Back on the Arcturian homeworld, Janus moved through the bustling streets of the capital city. The once pristine, crystal spires now bristled with makeshift defenses, and the air was thick with tension. He approached a group of Arcturian civilians being instructed by a human Marine. Remember, the Marine, Major Marcus Hawkins, was saying, in the event of a ground assault, your primary goal is to get to the nearest shelter. Don't try to be a hero. Janus nodded approvingly. Thank you, Major. Your assistance has been invaluable. Hawkins turned and offered a crisp salute. Just doing our part, sir. We're all in this together now. As Janus continued his inspection of the city's defenses, he couldn't help but marvel at how quickly humans and Arcturians had learned to work together. It gave him hope that they might yet survive this crisis. Aboard the UES Titan, Dr. Marcus Elliott stood before the holding cell of the captured Vorax pilot. The alien's tentacles writhed in agitation, its bioluminescent patches pulsing rapidly. I think I'm beginning to understand, Elliott murmured, studying the readouts on his datapad. The radiation they use for communication, it's not just a means of transmitting information. It's vital to their very existence. He tapped his comm unit. Lieutenant Chen, I'm sending you some new data. I believe I've identified the exact frequency of radiation the Vorax use. If we can disrupt it, we might be able to do more than just cut off their communication. Sophia's voice came back, excitement evident in her tone. We could potentially incapacitate them entirely. In the lab, Sophia and Lyra pored over the new information. Their earlier tension had given way to a smooth, almost synchronized workflow. As Sophia adjusted the disruptor's emitter array, Lyra fine-tuned the power distribution. I think we've got it, Sophia said, her eyes bright with triumph. A few more adjustments and we should be ready for a full-scale test. Lyra's skin flushed a deep blue. Sophia, I want you to know that working with you has been an honor. Our people have much to learn from each other. Sophia smiled warmly. The feeling's mutual, Lyra. Together, we just might save both our species. Their moment of camaraderie was interrupted by a violent shudder that ran through the ship. Red alert klaxons began to blare throughout the Titan. On the bridge, Admiral Reed gripped the arms of his chair as the ship rocked from another impact. Report, he barked. Lieutenant Commander Alex Thorne's fingers flew over his console. Sir, the Vorax have begun targeting our civilian evacuation ships. They're tearing through our defensive screen like it wasn't even there. Reed's lips pursed. He knew what he had to do, but the cost would be high. Helm, bring us about. We're going to hit their flank, draw their fire away from the evacuees. Sir, Thorne protested, that'll leave us exposed. We'll take heavy damage. I'm aware, Commander, Reed replied grimly. Sometimes victory requires sacrifice. All hands brace for impact. The Titan and its escort ships surged forward, unleashing a furious barrage against the Vorax fleet. The gambit worked. The massive alien ships turned their attention away from the fleeing civilian vessels and focused their firepower on Reed's task force. Shields down to 30%, Thorne reported, his voice strained. Hull breaches on decks 4 through 7. Emergency crews responding. Reed watched as the last of the evacuation ships slipped away to safety. Begin our withdrawal. Get us back to friendly space. As the battered Titan limped back to the Allied lines, Reed received a priority communication from Sophia. Admiral, we've done it. The psionic disruptor is ready for deployment. A glimmer of hope sparked in Reed's chest, but it was quickly tempered by reality. Excellent work, Lieutenant, but how do we get it close enough to the Vorac's fleet to be effective? Lieutenant Commander Thorne spoke up, his face grim but determined. Sir, I have an idea. It's risky, but it might be our only shot. As Thorne outlined his plan to modify a stealth shuttle, Reed listened intently. He knew they were rapidly running out of options. When Thorne finished, Reed turned to address the bridge crew. I won't order anyone to undertake this mission. The risks are extreme, and the chances of survival are minimal. Do we have any volunteers? Before anyone else could speak, Captain Jake Morrison stepped forward, his eyes blazing with drive. I'll do it, sir. Just point me in the right direction. Reed nodded solemnly. Very well, Captain. Report to Lieutenant Chen immediately for briefing on the psionic disruptor. We'll begin modifying the shuttle at once. As Morrison left the bridge, a new alert sounded from the long-range sensor station. Reed turned, a sense of dread growing in the pit of his stomach. Sir, the sensor operator reported, his voice quavering, we're detecting another Vorac's fleet approaching from Vector 047. It's even larger than the first. Reed's mind raced as he absorbed this new information. Their situation, already desperate, had just become nearly impossible. He took a deep breath, steadying himself. As the crew scrambled to prepare for the coming storm, Reed stared out at the stars, now obscured by the looming shapes of the Vorac's ships. In the heart of that vast enemy armada, a single modified shuttle would soon make its way, carrying with it the hopes of two civilizations. The fate of humanity and the Arcturians now rested on the shoulders of Captain Jake Morrison and the untested psionic disruptor. As the final preparations began, the tension aboard the Titan reached a fever pitch. The next few hours would determine whether their desperate alliance would triumph or if both their species would be consigned to the pages of history. The Titan's bridge erupted into a flurry of activity as Admiral Reed's orders rang out. All hands prepare for Operation Shadowblade. This is our moment. Captain, Reed said, his voice steady despite the gravity of the situation, the Shadowblade is prepped and waiting. Are you ready? Morrison nodded, his eyebrows furrowed. As I'll ever be, sir. Let's give these Vorac's something to remember us by. As Morrison made his way to the launch bay, Lieutenant Sophia Chen and her Arcturian counterpart Lyra were making final adjustments to the psionic disruptor. The device hummed with awe-inspiring energy, its intricate circuitry a testament to the unprecedented cooperation between human and Arcturian technology. We've pushed it to the absolute limit, Sophia said, wiping sweat from her brow. Any more power and it might destabilize before reaching the target. Lyra's antennae twitched in agreement. Indeed, the balance is precarious, but it's our best chance. We must trust in Captain Morrison's skills now. In the holding cell, Dr. Marcus Elliott continued his relentless study of the captured Vorac's pilot. The alien's bioluminescent patches pulsed erratically, its tentacles writhing in apparent distress. Elliott's eyes widened as he noticed a pattern in the creature's bioreadings. Incredible, he muttered, furiously inputting data into his pad. The frequency, it's not just communication, it's amplification. He tapped his comm unit. Lieutenant Chen, this is urgent. I'm sending you new data on the Vorac's psionic frequency. If you can adjust the disruptor to match this exact wavelength, it could dramatically increase its effectiveness. In the launch bay, Morrison climbed into the cockpit of the Shadowblade. The modified stealth shuttle was a masterpiece of engineering, its sleek lines barely visible even at close range. As the canopy sealed, Morrison ran through his pre-flight checks, each movement precise and practiced. Shadowblade to bridge, all systems green, requesting clearance for launch. Clearance granted, Shadowblade, Reed's voice crackled through the comm. Godspeed, Captain. We're all counting on you. The launch bay doors slid open, revealing the vast expanse of space beyond. The Vorax fleet loomed in the distance, a dark mass blotting out the stars. Morrison took a deep breath, centered himself, and engaged the shuttle's engines. The shadow blade shot out of the Titan like a bullet from a gun, its advanced cloaking technology rendering it nearly invisible to the naked eye. As Morrison navigated through the debris field left by earlier skirmishes, Admiral Reed's voice came through the comm once more. All ships initiate Operation Phantom Fleet, deploy holographic projectors, and prepare for diversionary assault. Across the battlefield, unmanned drones sprang to life, their holographic projectors creating the illusion of a massive Allied fleet. The deception was flawless, each holographic ship mimicking the energy signatures and movement patterns of real vessels. As the Vorax fleet reacted to this apparent new threat, the real Allied ships formed a tight defensive perimeter around the Arcturian homeworld. Human and Arcturian crews worked in perfect harmony, their earlier mistrust replaced by a shared commitment to survive. On the Titan's bridge, Lieutenant Commander Alex Thorne coordinated the complex ballet of ships and information. His fingers danced across holographic displays, relaying real-time intelligence to both Morrison and Admiral Reed. "Shadowblade, be advised," Thorne said, his voice tense. "Vorax patrols are shifting to intercept our decoy fleet. You have a clear path to their command ship, but it won't last long." Morrison acknowledged the update, his hands steady on the controls as he guided the Shadowblade deeper into enemy territory. The shuttle's sensors picked up the chaos unfolding around him. Vorax ships changing formation, energy weapons flaring to life as they engaged the holographic fleet. As Morrison approached the heart of the Vorax formation, a sudden alarm blared in the cockpit. A Vorax patrol ship had detected an anomalous energy signature. The Shadowblade's cloak wasn't perfect. "Damn it," Morrison muttered, his mind racing through options. He cut the shuttle's main engines, relying on momentum and maneuvering thrusters to evade the approaching patrol. The next few minutes were a high-stakes game of cat and mouse. Morrison's piloting skills were pushed to their limits as he wove through debris fields and used larger Vorax ships as cover. The patrol ship fired blindly, energy beams slicing through space where the Shadowblade had been moments before. Just as Morrison thought he'd lost his pursuer, a glancing hit rocked the shuttle. Warning lights flashed across his console. The cloaking system was failing. "Shadowblade to Titan," Morrison called, his voice tight with tension. "Cloak is compromised. I'm going to have to improvise." Without waiting for a response, Morrison made a split-second decision. He plotted a direct course for the massive Vorax command ship, diverting all power to engines and shields. As the Shadowblade streaked towards its target, the Vorax fleet finally became aware of the true threat in their midst. Ships began to converge on Morrison's position, filling space with a deadly web of energy beams and projectiles. Aboard the Titan, Admiral Reed watched the unfolding drama with a mix of pride and fear. "All ships, this is it. Full assault on the Vorax fleet. Give Captain Morrison the opening he needs." The space around the Vorax command ship erupted into chaos as the Allied fleet unleashed its full arsenal. Human and Arcturian weapons fire mixed with exotic energy pulses from hybrid technologies, battering the Vorax defenses. In the Shadowblade's cockpit, Morrison's world narrowed to a single point, the looming bulk of the Vorax command ship. Alarms blared as the shuttle's systems redlined, pushed beyond their limits. With one hand, Morrison prepped the psionic disruptor for detonation. With the other, he readied the ejection system. Moments before impact, Morrison punched the eject button. The cockpit canopy blew off, and he was catapulted into the void of space. Behind him, the Shadowblade plowed into the Vorax command ship, its precious cargo detonating on impact. As Morrison floated in space, his suit's thrusters struggling to stabilize him, he watched the Allied fleet seize the opportunity. Human and Arcturian ships tore into the disoriented Vorax, unleashing a devastating counterattack. His oxygen reserves dwindling, Morrison spotted a small ship approaching rapidly. For a moment he tensed, unsure if it was friend or foe. Then he recognized the sleek lines of an Arcturian vessel. The ship's pilot, Lyra, guided the craft with exceptional skill, navigating through debris and ongoing combat to reach Morrison. As the rescue ship's airlock sealed around him, Morrison allowed himself a moment of relief. Aboard the Titan, Admiral Reed was about to order a final push when a new alert sounded from the long-range sensor station. His blood ran cold as he processed the information. A second Vorax fleet was approaching, even larger than the first. As Lyra's ship docked with the Titan, bringing a weary but triumphant Morrison back to safety, Reed knew that the true test of the human-Arcturian alliance was yet to come. The success of the psionic disruptor had given them hope, but the war was far from finished. Reed turned to his crew, his voice steady despite the weight of command. "Alert all ships. We've won the battle, but the war continues. Prepare for the next phase of operations." As the Allied fleet regrouped, tending to their wounded and repairing what they could, the silhouette of the approaching Vorax armada grew ever larger on their sensors. The hard-won victory of Operation Shadowblade had bought them time and hope, but the greatest challenge still lay ahead. As the silhouette of the approaching Vorax armada grew on their sensors, Admiral Reed wasted no time. He turned to Janus, the Arcturian leader, who stood beside him on the Titan's bridge. "We need to act fast," Reed said, his voice low and urgent. "What resources can we pull together?" Janus's multifaceted eyes flickered with rapid calculations. "Our salvage teams are standing by. If we can retrieve Vorax technology from the disabled ships, it could give us an edge." Reed nodded, tapping his comm unit. "Lieutenant Chen, assemble your team. We're going Vorax hunting." Within minutes, Sophia Chen and a mixed group of human and Arcturian engineers were suited up and boarding sleek salvage craft. As they launched from the Titan, Sophia's heart raced with a mixture of fear and excitement. "Remember," she said to her team, "we're looking for propulsion and weapon systems. Be careful and watch each other's backs." The salvaged ships weaved through the debris field, remnants of the recent battle scattered like cosmic confetti. They approached the hulking forms of disabled Vorax vessels, their surfaces pockmarked with impact craters and scorch marks. As Sophia's team cut their way into the alien ship, the eerie silence of space gave way to the hiss of atmosphere escaping. They moved cautiously through corridors lined with pulsating biomechanical interfaces, their helmet lights casting long shadows. "Over here," called Zurix, an Arcturian engineer. "I believe this is part of their main weapons array." Sophia examined the alien technology, its design both beautiful and terrifying. "Good work. Let's get it out of here." Back on the Titan, Dr. Marcus Elliott hunched over his workstation, surrounded by holographic displays of Vorax biological data. His eyes widened as a new pattern emerged from the chaos of numbers and graphs. "That's it!" he exclaimed, startling a nearby lab assistant. "Admiral Reed, I need to see you immediately." In the command center, Elliott explained his discovery, pointing to a complex molecular structure floating in the air between them. This compound allows the Vorax to withstand intense radiation from their home star. It's integral to their biology, and by extension, their technology. Reed's mind raced with the implications. "So their ships are likely optimized for their native star system," Elliott finished. "In a different radiation environment, they could be at a significant disadvantage." A plan began to form in Reed's mind. He turned to Janus. "Those planetary engines of yours, how quickly can they move a planet?" Janus's antennae twitched in surprise. "You can't be suggesting—" The next hours were a flurry of activity. As the Allied fleet prepared to relocate to a nearby star system with higher radiation levels, Lieutenant Commander Alex Thorne coordinated the integration of salvaged Vorax technology into their ships. In a makeshift hangar, human and Arcturian technicians worked side by side, their movements becoming more synchronized with each passing minute. Sparks flew as alien alloys were fused with familiar hulls, creating hybrid vessels that hummed with newfound power. Thorne wiped sweat from his brow as he inspected a newly upgraded fighter. "How's it looking, Kayla?" he asked the Arcturian engineer beside him. Kayla's tendrils waved in what Thorne had come to recognize as excitement. "The energy output is 37% higher than our previous best. If the simulations are correct, we may be able to match the Vorax in ship-to-ship combat." Meanwhile, Captain Jake Morrison stood before a diverse group of pilots in a briefing room. Humans and Arcturians sat side by side, their attention focused on the holographic display of battle formations. "Welcome to Starfire Squadron," Morrison said, his voice carrying the weight of their responsibility. "We're going to be the tip of the spear in the coming fight. Our job is to hit hard, hit fast, and exploit every weakness we can find in the Vortex formation." He gestured to an Arcturian pilot. "Zara, you'll be my wing. Your species' heightened spatial awareness combined with our tactical doctrine should give us an edge in close-quarters combat." As the briefing continued, the Allied fleet began its daring maneuver. The Arcturian homeworld shuddered as its planetary engines ignited, creating a spectacle visible from space. Massive streams of energy poured from the planet's poles, propelling it through the void. Aboard the Titan, Reed watched as stars streaked past the viewscreen. "Status report," he called out. "We're approaching the target system, sir," a navigator responded. "Radiation levels are increasing as expected." Reed nodded, his eyebrows furrowed. "Prepare all ships for combat. The Vorax will be here soon, and we need to be ready." As if on cue, long-range sensors lit up with warnings. The second Vorax fleet had arrived, their numbers blotting out the stars. But something was different. Their usually perfect formation was slightly askew, ships drifting out of alignment. "It's working," Elliot said, studying the sensor data. "The radiation is interfering with their systems." Reed allowed himself a small smile. "All ships, battle stations, Starfire Squadron, you have the lead. Show them what we can do." The space between the fleets erupted in a dazzling display of weapons fire. Human and Arcturian ships, newly upgraded with Vorax technology, met the invaders head-on. Morrison's Starfire Squadron darted between the massive Vorax ships, their mixed human-Arcturian crews working in perfect harmony. Despite the initial success, the sheer number of Vorax ships began to take its toll. Allied vessels fell one by one, their destruction adding to the chaos of the battlefield. On the Titan's bridge, Sophia, Chen, and Lyra approached Admiral Reed, their faces etched with willpower. "Sir," Sophia said, "we have an idea. It's risky, but it might be our only chance." As they explained their plan for a massive improvised psionic disruptor, Reed's expression grew grave. The potential for victory was tantalizing, but the cost... "Who would pilot the delivery ship?" he asked, already dreading the answer. Sophia and Lyra exchanged a look. "We would, sir," Lyra replied. "Together." "Do it," he said quietly. "But understand, I'm not ordering you to do this. It has to be your choice." As Sophia and Lyra rushed off to prepare their desperate mission, Reed turned back to the battle raging outside. The Alliance fought with everything they had, their willpower to survive driving them to incredible feats of courage and skill. But would it be enough? As Reed watched Sophia and Lyra's ship prepare for launch, he knew that the next few hours would determine the fate of not one, but two civilizations. The impossible risk was about to begin, and the entire galaxy held its breath. As Sophia and Lyra's ship prepared for launch, Admiral Reed's eyes remained fixed on the battle raging outside. The Alliance fought with everything they had, their skills pushed to the limit against the overwhelming Vorax force. But even as he watched, a realization struck him. He couldn't ask these brave souls to undertake such a perilous mission. Reed's eyebrows furrowed as he made his decision. He tapped his comm unit. "Chen, Lyra, belay that launch. I'm taking command of this operation myself." "This isn't up for debate," Reed cut him off. "I won't send others to do what I'm not willing to do myself. Prepare the ship for my departure." As word spread of the Admiral's decision, the crew of the Titan worked with renewed urgency. In the hangar bay, Sophia, Chen, and Lyra redirected their efforts, integrating the massive psionic disruptor, now dubbed the Nexus Breaker, into a heavily modified Arcturian cruiser. Sophia wiped sweat from her brow as she made final adjustments to the device. "This thing's got more juice than we initially planned. The radiation in this system is actually amplifying its potential output." Lyra's multifaceted eyes flickered with concern. The ship's shielding may not be sufficient to protect the pilot from the backlash. Before Sophia could respond, a new voice joined their conversation. Then we'll just have to make sure it holds. "Zara, on your six!" Morrison called out, his fighter rolling to provide covering fire for his Arcturian wingmate. Together, they wove through a hail of enemy fire, their hybrid ships pushing the limits of maneuverability. Back on the Titan, Reed was preparing to board the modified cruiser when Janus approached him. The Arcturian diplomat's antennae twitched with nervous energy. "Admiral," Janus said, "I request permission to join you on this mission." "I do," Janus replied, his voice steady. "But our alliance should be represented by both our peoples. Even in this, let us face this challenge together." After a moment's consideration, Reed nodded. "Very well. Let's show them what our species can accomplish when we work as one." As Reed and Janus boarded the ship, Lieutenant Commander Alex Thorne assumed temporary command of the Allied fleet. His voice rang out across the comm channels, coordinating the massive assault that would serve as their diversion. "All ships, engage at will," Thorne ordered. "Keep the Vorax occupied and create an opening for the Admiral's run." The space around them erupted in a dazzling array of weapons fire as the entire human Arcturian armada threw themselves at the enemy. Amid the chaos, Reed piloted their cruiser towards the heart of the Vorax formation, Janus monitoring the ship's systems beside him. They encountered fierce resistance almost immediately. Vorax ships swarmed around them, their weapons leaving scorch marks across the cruiser's hull. Alarms blared as several systems began to fail under the assault. "Shields down to 30%, Janus reported, his fingers dancing across the controls. "Rerouting power from non-essential systems." Reed gritted his teeth, pushing the ship into a series of evasive maneuvers. "We're not out of this fight yet." Suddenly, a group of Vorax ships broke off from the main fleet, moving to intercept them. Reed tensed, preparing for the worst. But to his astonishment, the Vorax vessels formed a protective screen around their cruiser. "Are you seeing this?" Reed asked, disbelief coloring his voice. Janus leaned forward, studying the sensor readings. "It appears these Vorax have broken free from the hive mind. They're helping us." With the unexpected assistance of the rogue Vorax, Reed and Janus pushed deeper into enemy territory. The Nexus Breaker hummed with building energy, ready to unleash its psionic payload. As they approached their target zone, Reed and Janus shared a look of understanding. The blast radius would likely consume their ship as well. In that moment, no words were needed. They both accepted the price of their mission. Reed's hand hovered over the activation switch. For Earth, for Arcturus, and for all free beings in the galaxy. Janus placed his hand atop Reed's. Together. The Nexus Breaker activated with a silent flash, unleashing a massive wave of psionic energy that engulfed the entire Vorax fleet. The effect was immediate and devastating. Vorax ships spun out of control, their crews severed from the hive mind that coordinated their actions. Some ceased functioning entirely, while others began to attack their fellow ships in confusion. In the chaos that followed, Captain Morrison led Starfire Squadron in a series of precision strikes against key Vorax command vessels. "All wings, report in," he called, his voice tense with exertion. "Red 2, still in the fight?" Zara responded, her Arcturian ship darting between two colliding Vorax cruisers. One by one, the squadron checked in, their voices a mixture of human and Arcturian, united in purpose. They pressed their advantage, exploiting every weakness in the crumbling Vorax defenses. From the bridge of the Titan, Thorne watched the battle unfold with a mixture of hope and trepidation. The Vorax fleet was in disarray, but the cost had been high. The cruiser carrying Admiral Reed and Janus had vanished in the chaos of the psionic disruption, its fate unknown. As the human-Arcturian alliance moved to secure their hard-fought victory, questions lingered. What would become of the Vorax now that their hive mind was shattered? How would the alliance move forward without their key leaders? And what unseen challenges awaited them in the aftermath of this cataclysmic battle? The war might be ending, but the future remained uncertain. As debris from destroyed ships drifted past the view screen, Thorne steeled himself for the difficult decisions that lay ahead. The alliance had proven its strength in battle. Now it would be tested in peace. As debris from destroyed ships drifted past the view screen, Thorne steeled himself for the difficult decisions that lay ahead. The Alliance had proven its strength in battle. Now it would be tested in the aftermath. "All ships, report status," Thorne ordered, his voice steady despite the chaos surrounding them. The responses flooded in, a cacophony of human and Arcturian voices detailing damage reports, casualty lists, and dwindling resources. Thorne absorbed the information, his mind already formulating strategies to deal with the new reality they faced. "Sir," a young ensign called out, her eyes wide as she studied her sensor readings. "The Vorax fleet, it's just drifting." Thorne moved to her station, studying the display. Sure enough, thousands of Vorax ships floated aimlessly through space, their once perfect formation now a scattered mess of confused vectors and colliding vessels. "The Nexus Breaker worked," Thorne murmured, a mix of awe and apprehension in his voice. "They're cut off from the hive mind." He straightened, addressing the bridge crew. "Our priority now is containment. We can't let those ships roam free, even in their current state." Turning to his communications officer, Thorne issued his next command. "Get me Captain Morrison." Moments later, Morrison's face appeared on the main view screen, his features tight with exhaustion, but eyes still alert. "Captain," Thorne began, "I need Starfire Squadron to lead the charge in disabling the weapon systems of the larger Vorax ships. Can you handle it?" Morrison nodded sharply. "Consider it done, sir. We'll coordinate with the rest of the fleet to corral the smaller craft into designated zones." As Morrison's image winked out, Thorne turned his attention to the next pressing matter. "What's the status of Admiral Reed and Janus's ship?" The sensor operator shook her head. "No clear reading, sir. There's too much interference from the Nexus Breaker's aftermath. But, wait." She leaned in, adjusting her instruments. "I'm picking up a faint energy signature in the vicinity of their last known position." Hope sparked in Thorne's chest, but he kept his voice level. "Keep scanning. I want to know the moment you have anything concrete." As if summoned by his words, Morrison's face reappeared on the screen. "Sir, request permission to lead a search and rescue mission for the Admiral and Janus." Thorne considered for a moment, weighing the risks against the potential reward. "Granted, Captain. Assemble your best pilots, human and Arcturian. But be cautious. We don't know what's out there." As Morrison signed off to prepare his team, Thorne's attention was drawn to a commotion near the rear of the bridge. Lieutenant Sophia Chen and Lyra, the Arcturian scientist, were engaged in an animated discussion as they approached him. "Commander," Sophia began, her eyes bright with excitement, "we have an idea. The psionic disruptor technology, we think we can adapt it to communicate with the disconnected Vorax individuals." Thorne nodded, impressed by their quick thinking. "Make it happen. We need every advantage we can get." As Sophia and Lyra hurried off to begin their work, Dr. Marcus Elliott approached, his face grave. "Commander, I've been analyzing the data from the battle, and I've made a disturbing discovery about the Vorax hive mind." Elliott's voice lowered. "The complete severing of the psychic link, it may have unintended long-term consequences for the Vorax species. We could be looking at widespread psychological trauma, maybe even physiological breakdown." The implications of Elliott's words hit Thorne like a physical blow. They had won the battle, but at what cost? The ethical ramifications were staggering. Before Thorne could fully process this new information, his tactical officer spoke up. "Sir, we have a new problem. The Vorax ships we've disabled. We need to deal with the crews. We're talking about thousands of potential prisoners of war." As the bridge crew scrambled to carry out his orders, Thorne allowed himself a moment to reflect on the incredible cooperation between humans and Arcturians that had brought them this far. It was clear that their alliance needed to be formalized to ensure their partnership could weather the challenges that lay ahead. His musings were interrupted by a startling report from communications. "Sir, we're receiving a transmission from a group of Vorax ships. They're requesting asylum." Thorne's eyebrows shot up in surprise. "Put them through." The view screen flickered to life, revealing a Vorax unlike any Thorne had seen before. Its exoskeleton was a deep purple, almost black, and its compound eyes seemed to shimmer with an intelligence that was distinctly individual. I am Zix, the Vorex spoke, its translated voice carrying a note of desperation. My companions and I aided your leaders during their mission. We seek protection from any remaining hive mind loyal forces. In exchange, we offer our knowledge of Vorex society and technology. Thorn's mind raced, evaluating the potential risks and benefits of this unexpected development. Before he could respond, alarms blared across the bridge. Long-range sensors detecting unusual activity at the system's edge, his sensor officer reported, voice tense. Initial analysis suggests it could be the remnants of the first Vorex fleet, regrouping. The weight of command settled heavily on Thorn's shoulders as he realized the immensity of the task before them. They needed to consolidate their forces, integrate Vorex technology into their defenses, and prepare for a potential counterattack, all while dealing with the immediate aftermath of their victory. As Thorn opened his mouth to issue orders, another report cut through the tension on the bridge. Sir, Captain Morrison's team is reporting a weak distress signal from an uncharted planetoid. They're moving to investigate. Hope and apprehension warred in Thorn's chest. Could it be Admiral Reed and Janus? And if so, what state would they find them in? Thorn squared his shoulders, ready to face whatever challenges lay ahead. The battle might be over, but it was clear that their struggles were far from finished. Concluded, the bridge hummed with tension as Thorn awaited news from Captain Morrison's search team. Commander, the communications officer called out, her voice tight with excitement. We're receiving a transmission from Captain Morrison's team. Thorn's pulse quickened. Put it through. A collective sigh of relief swept through the bridge, but Thorn remained focused. What's their condition, Captain? Injured but stable, Morrison replied. We found them in a makeshift shelter constructed from their ship's emergency pod. They managed to eject before the Nexus breaker activated. Thorn nodded, his mind already racing with the implications. Good work, Captain. Prepare them for immediate evac. He was cut off by Morrison's urgent tone. Sir, there's more. We've discovered some kind of ancient alien outpost on this planetoid. It's unlike anything we've ever seen. Thorn's eyebrows shot up. An alien outpost? Yes, sir. It appears to be the source of the electromagnetic interference we encountered. Admiral Reed is insisting we retrieve some artifacts and data storage devices before we leave. Before Thorn could respond, alarms blared across the bridge. The tactical officer's voice cut through the chaos. Sir, long-range sensors are picking up multiple contacts. It's the remnants of the first Vorex fleet. They're launching a coordinated assault on our positions. Understood, sir. We're loading the artifacts now. We'll be airborne in 5 minutes. As Morrison's image winked out, Thorn began issuing rapid-fire orders to prepare for the incoming assault. The bridge erupted into controlled chaos as officers relayed commands and readied the fleet for battle. Minutes stretched like hours as Thorn watched the Vorex fleet approach on the tactical display. Just as the enemy ships came within weapons range, the comm officer called out, Sir, Captain Morrison's ship has docked. Thorn didn't waste a second. Get Admiral Reed to the medical bay and patch him into our comms. We need his strategic input. Within moments, Reed's voice filled the bridge, strained but authoritative. Status report, Commander. As Thorn briefed Reed on the situation, the first volleys of Vorex weapons fire rocked the ship. Reed listened intently, his tactical mind already formulating a plan. Commander, Reed said, his voice gaining strength, we have an advantage they don't expect. Their hive mind is fractured. We need to exploit that. Reed outlined his strategy rapidly. Get Sophia, Chen, and Lyra to modify their psionic communication device. We need to broadcast a message to the Vorex ships, appealing to their newfound individuality. Offer them a chance for peace. And if they don't respond to diplomacy? Thorn asked, dodging sparks as another hit rocked the bridge. Then we show them the consequences, Reed replied grimly. Order Starfire Squadron to target their lead vessels. Precision strikes only. Disable, don't destroy. We want to sow confusion, not annihilation. Thorn relayed the orders, watching as Starfire squadrons streaked across the view screen, their weapons finding weak points in the Vorex ship's defenses with surgical precision. Simultaneously, Sophia and Lyra's voices crackled over the comms. Message ready for broadcast, sir. Send it, Reed commanded. The effect was almost immediate. Vorx ships began to break formation, their once coordinated assault devolving into chaos. Some vessels ceased fire entirely, while others continued their attack with diminished ferocity. As the battle raged on, Dr. Marcus Elliott's excited voice cut through the comms. Admiral, Commander, I've made a breakthrough with the artifacts from the planetoid. Go ahead, Doctor, Reed urged. The outpost belonged to an ancient race that once defeated the Vorx, Elliott explained rapidly. They developed technology specifically to counter the hive mind. This could be the key to a long-term solution. Reed absorbed this information, his mind already spinning with possibilities. Before he could respond, Janus's voice joined the channel, weak but determined. Admiral, Janus said, I have a proposal. The alien outpost, we could use it as a base to deploy a more powerful version of the Nexus Breaker, one that could sever the remaining Vorx from their hive mind permanently without physical harm. Reed considered for a moment, weighing the risks against the potential to end the conflict once and for all. Make it happen, he decided. Commander Thorne, dispatch Sophia, Chen, and Lyra with an engineering team to the planetoid. They'll lead the development of this new device. As Thorne relayed the orders, Reed turned his attention back to the battle at hand. The Alliance fleet continued to hold the line against the faltering Vorx assault, but the fighting was not nearly finished. Maintain our defensive posture, Reed ordered. Keep broadcasting our message of peace, but be prepared to strike at any ships that continue to show aggression. The view screen lit up with explosions and weapons fire as the two fleets clashed. Starfire Squadron wove through the chaos, their precision strikes causing more and more Vorx ships to drop out of the fight. In the medical bay, Reed gritted his teeth against the pain of his injuries, his eyes fixed on the tactical display. The fate of two species hung in the balance, with the outcome far from certain. As he watched Sophia and Lyra's ship disappear into the planetoid's atmosphere, Reed knew that their mission could be the key to ending this war once and for all. But first, they had to survive this battle. The UES Titan shuddered as another volley of Vorx weapons, fire impacted its shields. Admiral Reed, now fully recovered from his injuries, stood on the bridge alongside Commander Thorne, his eyes fixed on the tactical display. Status report, Reed barked, his voice cutting through the chaos of the battle. Thorne responded without taking his eyes off the screen. Shields holding at 62%, Admiral. Starfire Squadron has disabled 3 more Vorx cruisers, but their numbers are still overwhelming. Reed nodded, his mind racing through strategies. Keep our defensive formation tight. We need to buy Sophia and Lyra more time. As if on cue, the comm system crackled to life. Sophia Chen's voice, tinged with excitement and exhaustion, filled the bridge. Admiral Reed, Commander Thorne, do you read me? The enhanced Nexus Breaker is ready for deployment, Sophia announced. But there's a complication. We need a massive power source to activate it effectively across the entire battlefield. Reed's eyes narrowed as he processed this information. He exchanged a glance with Thorne, both men coming to the same realization simultaneously. Thorne's face paled slightly, but he nodded in agreement. It could work, sir, but the risk to the ship and crew... Reed's teeth clenched in willpower. We don't have a choice. Prepare for evacuation of all non-essential personnel. I'll remain aboard with a skeleton crew to oversee the activation. As Thorne began issuing evacuation orders, Janus approached Reed. The Arcturian's normally stoic features were etched with concern. Admiral, I must insist on remaining with you. Reed started to protest, but the look in Janus's eyes stopped him. He simply nodded, acknowledging the depth of their alliance and friendship. The next few minutes were a flurry of activity as crew members rushed to escape pods. Reed watched the tactical display, noting with grim satisfaction as Captain Morrison led Starfire Squadron in a bold maneuver, drawing the bulk of the Vorx fleet away from the Titan. All non-essential personnel evacuated, sir, Thorne reported. We're ready to move into position. The Titan lumbered into position, its engines straining against the gravitational pull of the nearby planetoid. Around them, the rest of the Alliance fleet formed a protective barrier, their weapons blazing as they held off the Vorx assault. Reed's voice was calm as he gave the order. Activate the Nexus Breaker. The effect was immediate and dramatic. The Titan shuddered violently as massive amounts of energy were drawn from its systems. Arcs of crackling energy danced across the ship's hull, casting an eerie glow across the bridge. A wave of psionic energy erupted from the Titan, expanding rapidly across the battlefield. On the tactical display, Reed and Janus watched as Vorax ships began to drift aimlessly, their crews severed from the hive mind that had controlled them for so long. "It's working," Janus breathed, his eyes wide with a mixture of awe and relief. But their celebration was short-lived. Alarms blared across the bridge as the Titan systems began to fail under the enormous strain. "Hull integrity at 47% and falling," Thorne reported, his voice tight. "We need to abandon ship, now!" Reed nodded grimly. "All remaining crew, make your way to the escape pods immediately." As they rushed from the bridge, a massive explosion rocked the ship, sending Reed and Janus sprawling. Debris rained down around them, blocking their path to the escape pods. "We're trapped," Janus said, coughing as smoke filled the corridor. Reed's mind raced, searching for a solution. Suddenly, the ship's comm system crackled to life. "Admiral Reed, Janus, do you copy?" Captain Morrison's voice cut through the chaos. "I'm coming in hot. Make your way to the main hangar bay if you can." Reed and Janus exchanged a look of disbelief before scrambling to their feet. They fought their way through the failing ship, dodging falling debris and electrical fires. As they burst into the hangar bay, they saw Morrison's fighter touching down, its engines still glowing hot from the rapid approach. The captain waved frantically from the cockpit. "Come on," he shouted. "This ship's about to blow!" Reed and Janus sprinted across the hangar, leaping into the fighter's small passenger compartment. Morrison didn't wait for them to strap in before gunning the engines, rocketing out of the hangar just as another explosion tore through the Titan. As they cleared the dying flagship, the view through the fighter's canopy was one of both destruction and hope. The Vorax fleet hung motionless in space, their crews now free from the tyranny of the hive mind. The Alliance ships moved among them, no longer firing weapons but beginning the monumental task of rescue and rehabilitation. Reed nodded, his eyes fixed on the scene before them. "We did, Captain, but our work is just the beginning." As the fighter docked with the cruiser, Reed's mind was already racing with the challenges that lay ahead. The Vorax would need help adapting to their new individual existence. The alliance between humans and Arcturians would need to be formalized and strengthened. But for now, as he stepped onto the cruiser's deck with Janus at his side, Reed allowed himself a moment of quiet satisfaction. They had faced an seemingly unbeatable foe and emerged victorious, not through superior firepower, but through cooperation, ingenuity, and an unwavering belief in the power of individual freedom. The next chapter in their interstellar journey was just beginning, and Reed knew that together, they were ready to face whatever challenges the universe might throw their way.
You have reached the end of the story. If you enjoyed this story and want to support us, please leave a like and subscribe to our channel, and for every comment that says 88, I will heart every single one of them. Thank you for your time.